My name is Rowena Hale, and the day they called me ungrateful was the same day I realized my family never truly saw me at all. It was my Aunt Margaret's funeral. The house was filled with the kind of grief that is performed, not felt. People in pressed black clothes murmured about how she was a pillar of the community, though half of them hadn't visited her once during her illness. My sister Claire and I stood together near the window, our hands intertwined like we were children again. The will reading was held in the drawing room. Heavy curtains, dusty sunlight touching old portraits, the smell of old books, floral perfume, and a silence that felt like it had weight. The lawyer, Mr. Bennet, adjusted his glasses and began. He spoke gently, as if his voice could soften inheritance. To neighbors, small tokens. To charities, donations. Then, to my niece Rowena, I leave a travel fund to be used as she chooses. Travel. Freedom. She had always encouraged me to see more than this town. It felt thoughtful. It felt personal. I said thank you. Quietly. Respectfully. Then Mr. Bennet cleared his throat and continued. To my nephew Arthur Hale, I leave the house and safe deposit box number 1 at Grand Oak Bank. Additionally, I appoint him executor of my estate. Something shifted. Not loudly, but distinctly. Claire's fingers tightened around mine. Arthur straightened in his chair, but his expression remained composed. He always played the role of the dependable one, the man who fixed fences, volunteered at the church auction, never raised his voice in public. People turned to look at me, not with pity but with judgment already forming. Someone whispered behind me. Rowena always had her head in the clouds. Another voice answered. She never appreciated what she had. Ungrateful. The word came to rest on me like dust. Arthur came to me afterward, placing a hand on my shoulder. A gesture meant to seem comforting, but felt like a pat on a pet. I'll handle everything, he said. You don't have to worry. I smiled politely. I did not trust the smile he returned. That evening photos appeared online. Family grouped together. Toasting. Smiling. One caption read, "Margaret's legacy is safe where it belongs." Another comment beneath it, "Some people forget to be thankful. Good thing Arthur understands responsibility." Ungrateful. 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 The word echoed like a slow drip of water in a quiet room. But my aunt had not been careless with details. She kept lists for everything. She labeled drawers. She folded letters into books like bookmarks. She did nothing without intention. If she left Arthur the house and a safe deposit box, she had a reason. And Margaret never abandoned reason. I called the estate lawyer the next morning. "Mr. Bennet," I said, "the safe deposit box, are there records of its contents?" "No," he answered carefully. "Your aunt documented everything except that. The box is sealed under executor supervision." "Then I need petition access," I said. He hesitated. "Do you suspect mishandling?" I thought of Arthur's hand pressed too firmly on my shoulder. His practiced sympathy. The whispers. "I suspect my aunt wanted something seen," I said. The lawyer exhaled. "Then you'll need independent counsel." So I called Caleb Ward, a local attorney known for quiet efficiency. We had only spoken once before, but he remembered me. "Do you want to challenge Arthur?" he asked. "Or verify him?" "Verify him," I said. "For now. Then we file an emergency petition for supervised access to the safe deposit box. If there is something in it meant for you, the law will allow us to retrieve it." The paperwork moved faster than I expected, almost as if someone behind the scenes wanted it to. 2 days later, the bank approved the supervised opening. Claire came with me. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. The vault was quiet. The air cold. A manager in gloves slid safe deposit box number 1 across a table. I inserted the key. Turned. Lifted. Inside, a single thick envelope rested on dark felt. My name written in Margaret's handwriting. My breath caught just once. I opened it carefully. At the top was a photograph. Arthur. Standing in front of a house I'd never seen. Holding 2 glasses of champagne. Smiling at someone outside the frame. Attached to the photograph was a date. A date 3 months before my aunt rewrote her will. And below it, written in her unmistakable script, "This is why." I reached deeper into the envelope. There was a second envelope sealed heavier. And across the front in my aunt's handwriting. Open only in the presence of counsel. I looked at Claire and saw fear in her eyes. Because we both understood. Whatever was inside, it wasn't just inheritance. It was truth. I sat at the small metal table in the bank's private room, staring at the sealed second envelope. My name was written in my Aunt Margaret's steady, looping handwriting. The same handwriting I had seen in birthday cards, grocery lists, and recipes she taped inside cabinet doors. But this envelope felt different. Final. Intentionally delayed. Claire stood behind my chair, arms folded tightly. Her silence was not shock. It was recognition. In our family, silence meant enough has been said, now act. I called Attorney Caleb Ward from the hallway. He arrived 20 minutes later, coat still buttoned, hair damp from the misting rain outside. He didn't ask questions. He simply read the envelope and nodded. Go ahead, he said. I broke the seal. Inside were documents layered, clipped, neatly organized. Bank statements, deeds, receipts, dates, signatures. But not mine. Not my aunt's. Arthur's. Each document showed transfers, sales, withdrawals, property agreements. My aunt's assets had been quietly reduced for over a year. Not lost. Not spent. Moved. Caleb leaned closer, scanning one page. Your aunt did not change her will because she was dying, he said calmly. She changed it because she discovered he was moving money through her accounts. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth. I went cold. Not angry. Not sad. Just cold. My aunt had trusted Arthur. She treated him like the son she never had. He ran errands, handled bills, picked up her prescriptions. Everyone praised him for being helpful. But helpfulness is the easiest disguise for greed. The photograph now made sense. The house in the picture wasn't a vacation rental. It was property acquired with my aunt's own funds, without her consent. The glass of champagne? Celebration. The person outside the frame? Unknown. My aunt had found out. Not through confrontation, but through accounting. She had tracked him, documented him, prepared for this moment. The final page in the envelope was a letter. I unfolded it slowly. My Rowena, I know how they speak of you. They call you restless. They call you ungrateful. They call you difficult to contain. Good. Those are the traits of the only person in this family who will not allow themselves to be used. There is more to the estate than they know. The will they heard is not the only will. You will find the rest when the time is right. Trust your instinct. Trust no one else. Especially not Arthur. My vision blurred, but not with tears. With clarity. She had chosen me. Not because I was obedient, but because I asked why. Claire placed a hand on my shoulder. Rowena, they'll tear you apart if this gets out. I nodded. Which is why it won't get out yet. Caleb closed the folder. His face remained unreadable. We need to secure copies. Lock these documents under legal protection. And we need to determine how much your aunt hid for safekeeping. Hidden? I asked. Yes, he said. Your aunt was not passive. If she discovered financial theft, she moved assets. Which means the version of the estate read at the funeral is incomplete. Incomplete. The word echoed. Claire exhaled. So what now? We don't confront him, I said. Not yet. Confrontation is emotional. Truth is strategic. We needed to know how deep the deception went. We needed to find the original will my aunt referenced. Somewhere she had hidden the second version. The real one. And she had left me the first map. Caleb stood. We start with where Arthur thought she would never leave secrets. I looked at him confused. Where? He didn't smile. But something shifted in his expression. At home, he said. In the house. The one he now thinks belongs to him. The realization struck hard. We would have to go back. Back into the house where everyone believed the story was already settled. Back into the house where my aunt lived, loved, and died. Back to the place Arthur now controlled. Claire squeezed my hand. He'll be there. I know, I said. And that was the point. Because the only way to reclaim the truth was to walk straight into his house and make him watch me find it. We drove to the house just after sunset. The sky was the color of slate, the kind that warns of rain but never commits. Claire sat beside me, silent, her fingers twisting the edge of her coat. Caleb followed in his own car, giving us distance. He understood that strategy begins before anyone speaks. Arthur's truck was already in the driveway. Of course it was. He liked to be seen, to look like he belonged. The porch light was on. The windows glowed. It was a house that used to feel warm. Now it felt staged. I knocked. I did not hesitate. Hesitation is an invitation to be questioned. Arthur opened the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rowena," he said. "Claire. I didn't expect visitors." "That makes us even," I replied. His jaw tightened. He stepped back, letting us in, but he didn't move far. He positioned himself like someone guarding something. And that told me everything. The house smelled the same. Lavender cleaner. Lemon polish. But something was off. The walls felt too bare. The shelves too neat. He had already started rearranging. Trying to erase her. Trying to settle into ownership. Claire touched a photograph on the mantel. Our aunt, sitting with us as children. The frame had been pushed behind newer things. Generic things. Things that suggested this house is mine now. I looked at Arthur. "I need access to the study." His smile thinned. "There's nothing in there you need." The will was clear. "Then proving that should be easy," I said. He didn't answer. Not verbally. But his shoulders stiffened. And stiff shoulders are as good as confession. He led us down the hallway. His footsteps were too loud. My heartbeat was quiet, controlled. The study door was closed. He hesitated before opening it. Inside, the room was exactly as I remembered, or rather, exactly as everyone remembered it. Because Aunt Margaret never changed the study. It had smelled like old pages and cedar for as long as I had been tall enough to reach the desk drawer. But the desk had been moved. Not much. Just enough. And only someone who had watched her sit there hundreds of times would know. Arthur didn't know I noticed. Claire did. Her hand slid into mine. Nothing said. Everything understood. I walked to the bookshelf. My aunt organized everything with intention. Not alphabetically. Not by subject. By memory. By association. Certain books belonged together because she read them during the same season of her life. Now that order was broken. A gap. Small. But impossible for her. A book was missing. Caleb stepped inside then, quiet as a shadow. Arthur's face changed when he saw him. "You brought a lawyer into my house?" "No," I corrected. "I brought our lawyer into my aunt's house." His lips parted. A small sound of disbelief. Or insult. Caleb spoke calmly. "Under pending petition. All property remains under legal freeze. Nothing can be removed. Nothing can be sold. Nothing can be altered." Arthur laughed once. Too sharp. "You think you can steal this from me?" I met his eyes. "You stole first." Silence fell. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. Arthur stepped closer. His voice lowered. "You don't know what you're doing, Rowena. You never did." He thought that would land. It didn't. It reminded me of every moment I had been underestimated. Every conversation where I had been spoken over. Every decision where my voice was the last considered. Those moments were gone now. I turned back to the bookshelf. My fingers traced along spines until they stopped at a volume that hadn't been moved. A thin, worn journal tucked behind the thicker books. I pulled it out slowly. Its leather cover was soft, edges frayed. My aunt's handwriting on the first page. Dates. Notes. Observations. But this wasn't a diary. It was a record. Of transactions. Of conversations. Of suspicions. Tracing line by line how Arthur had shifted money through accounts while telling her it was for repairs, investments, family benefit. Claire's breath hitched. Caleb's eyebrows lifted. A reaction as close to shock as I had seen from him. Arthur stepped forward fast. "Give me that." I closed the journal and held it against my chest. "No." His voice cracked, not loud, just sharp. "You don't understand what you're opening. You're going to ruin everything." "I know," I said softly. "That's why I'm doing it." He stared at me, and for the first time his confidence wavered. Not because he was afraid of losing money, but because he was afraid of losing control of the story. I placed the journal into Caleb's hands. "Make copies," I said. Caleb nodded once and slipped it into his case. Arthur watched it leave the room, watched his certainty follow it. And then he said something that made the air in the room go still. "Rowena, she never meant for you to find the second will." His words landed with the weight of something rehearsed. Not spontaneous, not emotional, but strategic. "She never meant for you to find the second will." Claire inhaled sharply. Caleb's expression didn't move, but his hand paused briefly over his briefcase latch. That micropause said everything. This was not a bluff. Arthur knew exactly what was hidden and where. And he had believed it would stay hidden. I didn't answer him. I didn't ask questions. Questions give away expectation. Silence invites confession. Arthur exhaled through his nose, turning away from us, pacing to the window. He stood there with his back to us, speaking as if narrating something to an unseen audience. Aunt Margaret was afraid of conflict. She didn't want the family fighting. She didn't trust courts. She didn't want this. He gestured vaguely at the room, at us, at the journal locked now in Caleb's briefcase. She wanted peace. Peace is the word people use when they mean silence. She trusted me to maintain that peace, he said. Claire let out a quiet laugh, not amused. Disbelieving. By moving her money into properties under your name? His jaw tightened. But he didn't deny it. He turned to me then, eyes sharp. You don't understand what she was protecting you from. Again, not spontaneous. Practiced. Which meant he had been waiting for this conversation. I stepped forward. My tone was calm, controlled, unshakable. Then say it plainly. He didn't. Of course he didn't. Deflection is its own confession. Instead, he tried something else, pity. You were always different. Sensitive. Easily overwhelmed. His voice softened like he was comforting a child. This family would have eaten you alive if she put you at the center of everything. I was shielding you. There it was. The mask made of benevolence. Caleb spoke before I could. Your argument is emotional. The documentation is factual. The journal alone demonstrates financial misconduct and probable undue influence. Arthur's composure slipped, just a crack. You don't get to come into my house. It is not your house, I said, quiet but absolute. Not yet. And maybe not ever. His mouth opened, then closed again. Because the truth of that sentence was legal, not emotional. We moved. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just purposeful. Claire and I searched the study while Caleb watched Arthur. Not restraining him, just making it clear that interference would be documented and used. Bookshelves. Desk drawers. Under rug edges. Behind framed photographs. Nothing. But my aunt had been predictable in her unpredictability. She hid important things behind ordinary ones. Always in plain sight, disguised as routine. I walked into the adjoining sewing room. The smallest room in the house, cramped with fabric and tins of buttons no one had used in years. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lavender sachets. Safe. Familiar. Claire followed. We began opening drawers. Not hurried, systematic. Thread spools. Scissors. Old sewing patterns. Receipts. Then inside a tin labeled winter buttons, I found a key. Small. Brass. Unmarked. My aunt never labeled things that mattered. She labeled things that didn't. My heart beat once, deep and low. Arthur must have heard the shift in the air. He appeared in the doorway instantly. His eyes went straight to my hand. And that was the moment he made his mistake. He lunged. Caleb was faster. He stepped between us, one hand raised. Not forceful, just firm enough to halt movement. Don't, he said. For your sake. Arthur stopped. Breathing hard. Face flushed, not with fear. With panic. Which meant I had just found something he had lost control of. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I didn't announce anything. I simply turned and walked down the hall. To my aunt's bedroom. The room was untouched. Exactly as she kept it. Bedspread neat. Curtains drawn softly. The air still holding the faint scent of her perfume. I knelt beside her dresser. Bottom drawer. False base. The wood lifted with familiar ease. And there, wrapped in linen, was a folder. Thin. Bound with red ribbon. I unwrapped it. Inside was a document titled, Last Will and Testament of Margaret Hale. Revised, dated 2 weeks before death. The page after that began, Executor Rowena Hale. Primary beneficiary, Rowena Hale. Secondary provision, Claire Hale. Arthur Hale removed with cause. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. Arthur made a sound, something between a gasp and a curse. He stepped forward. Caleb blocked him again. Quiet. Immovable. I closed the folder, held it to my chest, stood, and met Arthur's eyes. He wasn't masking anything now. He wasn't confident. He wasn't calm. He was cornered. You knew, I said quietly, and you thought you could bury it. His voice was barely audible. She wasn't supposed to change it. I smiled, small, sharp, and real. She did, I whispered. And now we prove why. We left the house with the revised will locked inside Caleb's briefcase. The journal was already secured in his office safe. Evidence in motion feels different than suspicion. Heavier, sharper, undeniable. We had not won. We had simply entered the real arena. Arthur stood on the porch as we walked to the car. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just watched, jaw clenched, hands fisted. A man realizing control was leaving him one grain at a time. We didn't speak until we were halfway to town. Claire stared out the window, brow furrowed in thought. She knew, Claire finally said. She knew he was stealing. But why wait to change the will until the end? Why not confront him sooner? Because Margaret never confronted with noise. She moved in quiet patterns. She observed. She documented. She prepared her strike so it could not be undone. Caleb answered without looking away from the road. She changed it when she gathered enough evidence to prove motive. If Arthur contested it during probate, the documentation would stand. Which meant she hadn't acted late. She had acted exactly when the proof was strongest. I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering her handwriting in the letter. You were always the one who asked why. Keep asking. We reached Caleb's office. The building was modest, red brick, tucked between a bakery and the town pharmacy. He ushered us inside and spread the journal, the photograph, the revised will, and the key we had found onto the table. This key, he said, tapping it with a pen, is not for the safe deposit box we opened. It's smaller. Could be for a personal lockbox. Or a lock at the house? Claire guessed. No, I said slowly. She would never hide two separate critical items in the same location. That risks loss twice over. Caleb nodded. Correct. My aunt had been cautious, but also sentimental. Her secrets lived in personal spaces, not random ones. Where did she spend her quiet hours? Where did she go to think? What did she touch when she needed to remember who she was? Her garden. A memory surfaced, Margaret kneeling beside her rose bushes, humming under her breath, slipping something into the hollow of a stone wall for safekeeping. I had been 8. She had winked and said, Not all safes are metal. I stood up. The garden. Claire blinked. Now, I said, because waiting gives your opponent time. We drove back to the house. Night had settled deeper, the sky now ink black. The porch light still glowed, but the inside lights were off. Arthur's truck was gone. That was both good and dangerous. We moved quickly around the house to the back garden. The air held the faint scent of rosemary and rain-soaked soil. The stone wall stretched along the yard's edge, uneven and old, built by hand, stone by stone. I traced the stones with my fingers, searching for what didn't belong. Then a hollow sound beneath one. My heart kicked once. I loosened the stone carefully. Behind it was a small tin, tarnished and dull. Claire held her breath. I opened it. Inside was a single key and a slip of folded paper. The key was brass, etched with numbers. Chesterton Bank, Box 14B. A completely different bank from the one we had gone to before. The paper read, Rowena, if you are holding this, then you found the first part. The second holds what I could not say aloud. Do not open it alone. And do not let Arthur get there first. A cold realization ran down my spine. Arthur knew about the will. But not about the second box. Not yet. Claire grabbed my wrist. If he figures this out. He won't, I said. Because he thinks the fight is already on the table. He's watching the house, the accounts, the lawyer. Caleb closed the tin. But he is also desperate now. And desperation makes people fast. Which meant we had to be faster. No waiting. No planning for morning. We go now. Before Arthur realized what we had found. Before he followed us. Before he got ahead again. I exhaled and stood. We drive to Chesterton tonight. Claire nodded. Caleb grabbed his coat. The garden was quiet. Too quiet. Then a twig snapped near the back fence. We froze. The kind of silence that follows wasn't natural. Someone had been listening. And the sound came from the direction of the driveway, where Arthur's truck was now parked again. Arthur's truck engine ticked quietly in the driveway, still warm. He hadn't been gone long. Which meant he hadn't simply returned. He had circled back. Watched. Waited. Claire grabbed my sleeve. We need to go. Now. Caleb didn't speak. He just moved. We slipped along the side of the house, keeping low, staying out of the line of windows. The night was sharp with cold, the kind that tightens lungs. I could feel my heart in my throat, beating hard but controlled. At the car, Caleb opened the back door for us and went around to the driver's side. No lights on. No engine rev. Just quiet ignition, headlights off. We rolled down the street in silence. Only when we had turned twice, then 3 times did he switch the headlights back on. Claire exhaled shakily. He was watching us. No, I said. He was waiting for us to make a move. He still thinks he's ahead. But he wasn't. Not anymore. The highway to Chesterton was long and mostly empty, fields stretching into darkness. The world outside looked endless, but inside the car the air was thick with unspoken fear. Caleb broke the silence. When we get the second box, we do not open it there. We bring it straight to my office. Nothing leaves until it is copied and notarized. I nodded. And if Arthur shows up? He will, Caleb said simply. But he will not be able to stop us unless we let him. There was something strangely comforting about the certainty in his voice. Like he had guided people through this kind of quiet battlefield before. Claire stared at the brass key in my hand. Rowena, she trusted you with this. I didn't look away from the road ahead. She trusted me to finish what she started. And I would. Chesterton Bank was small, old brick. The kind of building that held secrets simply because no one ever looked closely at it. We parked across the street, under a street lamp flickering unevenly. The bank was closed, but deposit box entry only required authorized clearance and a 24-hour security administrator. We approached the service entrance. I gave the administrator the key and identification. She checked the registry. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Box 14B hasn't been opened in over 7 years. 7 years. Meaning my aunt placed something there long before she knew she was ill. This wasn't an emotional decision. This was strategic foresight. The administrator escorted us to the vault. Heavy metal door. Fluorescent lighting humming in the silence. She slid box 14B to the table and stepped away. My hands were steady as I inserted the key. Turn. Click. Lift. Inside was another envelope, thicker than the first. On the front, my aunt's handwriting. For Rowena. For when truth requires proof. I lifted it. The weight felt like decisions, not paper. And then, footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Familiar. Arthur's voice echoed from the corridor. Rowena. Put it down. The administrator's confusion turned into alarm as Arthur appeared in the vault doorway. Chest rising, face flushed, eyes burning with a desperation he could no longer disguise. Caleb stepped between us instantly. You do not have access to this box. Leave. Arthur's voice broke, a raw edge. You don't understand what she left in there. It will ruin everything. There it was. The truth finally cracked open. Not fear of losing money. Not fear of losing the house. Not fear of the will. Fear of exposure. I held the envelope against me. No, I said. It will reveal everything. Arthur shook his head, breathing too fast, voice uneven now. If you read what's in there, you'll destroy this family. I stared at him, really stared. This family, I said, was destroyed when you decided your inheritance was worth more than your integrity. His face twisted. Anger, desperation, something close to grief. And then he lunged. The administrator gasped. Claire shouted. But Caleb was ready. He didn't hit Arthur. He didn't shove him. He simply caught Arthur's arm mid-swing and spoke one cold, clear sentence. "Touch her, and you will be arrested before you leave this room." Arthur froze. Not because of Caleb's strength. Because of the truth in his voice. Security was already moving. I stepped back, envelope pressed to my chest. Arthur's voice came out hoarse, almost pleading. "Rowena, please. Don't open it." I didn't answer him. Because the only answer was inside the envelope I held. We did not open the envelope in the vault. We didn't speak until we were back in the car. The envelope sat in my lap like a living thing. Warm from my hands, heavy with meaning. The rain had finally started, thin streaks across the windshield. The sound made the silence sharper. Claire turned toward me. "Rowena, he wasn't just scared. He was terrified." I nodded. Because this time he can't control the narrative. Arthur had built his life on perception. He was the responsible one. The steady one. The caretaker. The man who stayed. He was the one the family praised, defended, trusted because he made sure they needed him. And my aunt had trusted him too. Until she didn't. Caleb drove us back to his office. No one suggested going home. No one felt safe yet. Strategy requires momentum. Stopping gives room for retaliation. Inside, the office lights were warm, but the room felt cold. Caleb locked the door. Closed the blinds. Placed the envelope on the center of the conference table. No one touched it. Because opening something like this isn't just unveiling information. It is crossing a threshold you can never go back from. I sat. Claire sat. Caleb sat. And I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter first. Short. Handwritten. The curves familiar. The ink pressed deep where emotion had weighed on the pen. "Rowena, there is a truth I learned too late. I believed kindness could soften greed. I believed loyalty could repair betrayal. I believed family protected itself. I was wrong. When you read this, you will know what he took. You will know what I tried to restore. And you will know what must come next. Do not let them shame you for defending yourself. You do not owe them silence." Beneath the letter were documents. Not financial records this time. Medical records. I didn't understand at first. Then the date struck me. Lab results. Physician notes. Cognitive decline evaluations. Memory retention tests. My aunt had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia 2 months before Arthur began transferring her assets. My breath stopped. He didn't take advantage of convenience. He took advantage of a woman losing her memory. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. He knew. Caleb's voice was low. Steady. He had durable access to her accounts. He moved assets during the window when she was most vulnerable. Legally, that is not just misconduct. That is grounds for felony-level exploitation and voiding all transfers. I felt the room tilt, not from shock but from clarity. The revised will wasn't about choosing me. It was about undoing him. The next pages were worse. Emails. Printed. Highlighted. Messages Arthur had sent to a real estate agent stating, "She won't remember any of this in a year. I just need it set up before then." My aunt had printed them. Dated them. Saved them. She hadn't confronted him because she had been documenting him. Preparing the record. Leaving a map. For me. The final document was a list. A list of family members who knew she was declining. And said nothing. Claire whispered. They all pretended. Because that is easier than responsibility. I sat back in my chair. The envelope empty now. The truth complete. He expected us to be quiet, I said. Caleb nodded. He expected shame to keep you compliant. Claire spoke, voice shaking but steady. So what do we do now? Caleb didn't hesitate. We file for full executor removal, criminal financial exploitation, and fraud. And we file it publicly. Publicly. Not whispered in corners. Not negotiated behind doors. Not drowned in family meetings. Visible. True. Real. I breathed out slowly. My aunt had not chosen me to keep peace. She had chosen me to break silence. We stood. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed, controlled but unmistakably alert. It's the county clerk's office, he said. They received a motion just filed by Arthur's attorney. What motion? I asked. Caleb looked at me. Its meaning was a blade. He is petitioning to have you declared mentally unfit to handle the estate. He wasn't trying to stop the truth. He was trying to erase me. When someone tries to discredit you, it means they have run out of lies that work. The motion Arthur filed wasn't subtle. It claimed I was emotionally unstable due to grief, incapable of rational fiduciary judgment, and motivated by resentment rather than reason. He even attached statements from relatives, people who had hugged me at the funeral, claiming I had been overwhelmed and reactive. It was a narrative designed to sound reasonable. The worst lies are the ones that almost sound like care. Caleb placed the documents on the table between us. He prepared these months ago, he said. This wasn't a reaction. This was a contingency. Meaning Arthur had never intended for me to be part of this story at all. Claire's jaw clenched. He planned every step. He expected Margaret to fade quietly. He expected the family to believe him. He expected Rowena to stay small. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because now I saw every move for what it was. Arthur hadn't stolen money because he needed it. He stole because power made him feel real. And now that power was slipping. He was fighting with desperation. Caleb leaned forward. We don't counter this with emotion. We counter with documentation. The revised will. The journal. The email records. The medical timeline. We show the court that the only person acting from instability is him. Will they believe it? Claire asked. Caleb didn't blink. The law believes evidence. I exhaled. Slowly. Deliberately. Because fear wasn't the enemy here. Silence was. We file too, I said. Not quietly. Not later. Now. Caleb nodded. Then we move. Chesterton County Courthouse was a building I had always driven past but never entered. Today we walked through its tall glass doors like we were stepping into the center of the storm. The clerk recognized Arthur's petition immediately. The pages were still warm from the printer. When she saw my counterpetition, thick, organized, supported, her expression changed. Not sympathy. Not pity. Respect. People notice when a woman arrives prepared. We had barely finished filing when a familiar voice echoed down the hall. Rowena. We turned. Arthur approached us, walking fast but not running. His expression was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes from a person who has convinced themselves that control is still possible. He stopped just far enough to not seem threatening, but close enough to make it clear he meant to speak privately. Why are you doing this? He asked softly. I studied him. Because she asked me to. You're going to drag the family through court, he said. Through shame. Through public humiliation. You did that, I replied. Calm. Plain. True. He swallowed once. Hard. There are things you don't know, he said. Then say them. His jaw moved. He didn't. Because there was nothing to say that didn't reveal him further. So he tried a different door. Rowena, we can fix this. We can settle privately. You walk away. I walk away. The family stays intact. The family was broken before I got here, I said. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was heavy. And truthful. Something flickered across his face. Something raw like fear disguised as anger. You think you're ready for what comes next, he said. You're not. No, I answered. But I am willing. And willingness is more dangerous than confidence. We left the courthouse. The wind outside had picked up. Leaves scattered across the sidewalk like pages breaking loose from a book. Claire walked ahead to the car. Caleb stopped beside me. You stayed composed, he said. That matters. I nodded. But that is not what wins cases, he added. What wins is what comes next. What comes next? I asked. He looked at the envelope still in my hand, the one from Chesterton. We don't just reveal what he did, he said. We reveal why Margaret trusted you instead of the rest of them. Not just legal proof. Character proof. Legacy proof. Truth that lives after you speak it. We drove home in silence but not fear this time. Preparation. Lighting the match, not burning the house. When we pulled into my driveway, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. "Rowena," she whispered. "Turn on the news." I unlocked my front door, walked to the living room, and turned on the television. The headline was already there. "Local man under investigation for exploiting ailing relative. Family dispute stirs public interest." Arthur's name. His photograph. His story no longer controlled by him. He hadn't expected exposure to start this soon. And now the town and the law were watching. Small towns don't need proof to form opinions. They only need a headline. By morning, the story had traveled faster than any legal motion could. People who had smiled at Arthur in church were whispering now. Some defended him out of habit, others out of fear of being wrong. But most just watched, waiting to see which version of the story would win. I knew better than to mistake attention for support. Truth is slow. Rumor is fast. Claire and I sat at my kitchen table, coffee untouched. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, cousins, aunts, neighbors. Messages that pretended to be concerned but were really demands. "Explain yourself. Fix this quietly. Don't embarrass us." I didn't respond to any of them. Caleb arrived just after 9. He wore the same calm presence he always did, but today his eyes held a sharper focus. "We moved today," he said. "The court of public opinion has already begun. We don't let Arthur own the narrative." He spread out the documents, the revised will, the journal, the medical timeline, the emails, into one coherent, devastating sequence. "This," he said, tapping the center page, "is not just inheritance. This is intent." He exploited cognitive decline for personal gain. The law has names for that. Claire's voice was steady when she answered. "Felony exploitation. Fraud. Coercive control." Caleb nodded. "And removal from executor status is guaranteed once the judge sees this." Guaranteed. The word felt like stepping onto solid ground after months of water. But just as we were preparing to leave, a car door slammed outside. I looked through the window. It wasn't Arthur. It was family. 3 of them. His mother, his uncle, and my aunt's oldest friend. A woman who had called me sweet girl since childhood. They didn't knock gently. They pounded. Claire stiffened. "They're going to try to talk you down." No, they were going to try to shame me. Because silence keeps families looking intact on the outside. I opened the door, but only halfway. His mother began first, voice trembling not from sorrow, but rage held tight. "Rowena, how could you do this to us?" "To him? After everything he has done for Margaret?" "For Margaret," I repeated softly. "Or for her estate." Her expression flickered. The uncle stepped forward. "You're tearing the family apart over paperwork and misunderstanding. That's not love. That's revenge." I spoke evenly. Love is protecting the person who could no longer protect herself. The oldest friend, the one I had always trusted, looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Margaret would not want this," she whispered. I felt that. Deeply. "She didn't want this," I said. "That's why she left me instructions. Why she made a second will. Why she documented everything. I didn't reach for the documents to prove it. Truth doesn't need to be waived." They stared at me, not at the evidence but at the fact that I no longer bowed. And that was the real betrayal to them. Not exposing Arthur. Exposing the silence that protected him. His mother's voice cracked, finally honest. "If he goes down, we all will." There it was. The real fear. Caleb stepped forward then, voice calm and final. "He did that to all of you. Not her." They didn't argue. They left. The house was quiet again. But not the same silence as before. This silence had direction. The court hearing was short, efficient, clinical. The judge reviewed the evidence packet Caleb had prepared. Arthur's attorney tried to object, to delay, to reframe. But intent does not vanish when spoken carefully. The judge lowered her glasses. "Executor Hale is removed pending full investigation. Control of the estate is temporarily assigned to the petitioner." Control. Returned. Not as inheritance but as responsibility. Arthur didn't look at me when the judge announced it. Shame isn't loud. It is stillness. We stepped out of the courthouse into cold air that tasted cleaner than any I remembered. But victory is never the end of the story. As we reached the car, Claire grabbed my arm. "Rowena." Her voice wasn't panicked. It was fearful. I looked where she pointed. Across the parking lot, leaning against his truck, was Arthur. But he wasn't alone. He was speaking to a reporter. Smiling. Spinning a story. And this time it wasn't about me. It was about Margaret. He was rewriting her legacy. And the town was ready to listen. Arthur spoke with the confidence of someone who had gotten away with everything once before. The reporter nodded, pen moving quickly, already shaping sympathy into story. I could hear pieces of his narrative as we approached. She wasn't well. She was confused. She changed her mind constantly. I was just trying to help. He was no longer fighting to keep the estate. He was fighting to rewrite who Margaret was. And that was the line I would not allow him to cross. I stepped forward. The reporter looked up. Arthur's smile faltered. "Would you like to comment?" the reporter asked. "Yes," I said. "I would." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't accuse him. I told the truth. My aunt was diagnosed early. She knew exactly what was happening to her. And she recorded every financial decision made in her name. Her handwriting is on every page. Her voice is in every document. She was never confused. She was never manipulated. She saw everything clearly, especially who was taking advantage of her. I let the reporter see the folder in my hand, not open, just present. Evidence as quiet weight. "This is her voice," I said. "Not mine. Not his. Hers." The reporter didn't look at Arthur again. Because nothing is louder than documentation held calmly. Arthur exhaled. A short, broken sound. And for the first time since this began, he looked small. Not defeated. Revealed. "There is a difference." Claire touched my shoulder. Caleb nodded once. We didn't stay. We didn't explain further. Explanations are what people demand when they want to stay blind. Truth requires no permission. In the weeks that followed, the investigation moved forward. The estate was secured. Transfers were reversed. The revised will was validated. Arthur's petition was dismissed. Charges proceeded. The family did what families do. Some avoided me. Some apologized. Some pretended they had always known the truth. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Margaret's story, her real story, would not be replaced. I visited her grave on a calm morning. No flowers. Just sunlight and quiet grass. "I didn't do this for revenge," I said softly. "I did this so they would not rewrite you." And in the stillness, I knew she would have understood. If you're listening to this and someone has told you your voice is too loud, too emotional, too difficult, remember this. People call you ungrateful the moment you stop being useful to them. Your truth is not something you owe them silence for. And your story isn't over just because they expect you to stay quiet. Stay. Listen. Breathe. You are not small.